I've been making these videos for about 18 months now, something like that. And I guess I've probably made, I don't know, 500 odd, something like that, videos. And I don't really prepare them beforehand. I don't think about what I'm going to say. When I go out and walk my dogs, I have no real idea what I'm going to think about. Even though I know that they keep coming back to familiar themes and ideas have kind of developed in my thinking. Whether that's evident in the videos or not, I don't know. But one of the things that I'm kind of becoming aware of, really, is a kind of self-consciousness. Not so much in my own experience. In fact, I feel less self-conscious making these videos now than when I first started. I can make them with people around now. I certainly couldn't do that when I first started doing these. It's more about that I'm becoming kind of self-consciously aware of the form they're taking. Because I didn't start out as a particular form. I didn't start out thinking, oh, I'll do this series of peripatetic videos wandering around along the banks of canals talking about various things. I started out walking my dogs, making notes of things that interest me in notebooks, and then keeping losing the notebooks. So I started recording what I was thinking about instead, and putting it online so I wouldn't lose it. I mean, that was the original impetus for this whole process. And it's as I say, that's kind of developed a life of its own, in the sense that it's now a YouTube channel. I know lots of people don't watch it, or not a lot of people watch it, and that's fine. But some people do, and I'm starting to become increasingly aware that some people watch what I'm saying and listen to what I'm saying, and occasionally make comments and do that whole ratings thing and what have you. And it's great. You know, I really like it. I'm not unappreciative at all. I really value some of the people who've subscribed to my channel and left comments or given me ratings. I really am serious about that. But I am kind of aware, really, that the form that these videos are taking, which are just ramblings, I mean literal ramblings, but metaphorical ramblings as well, isn't really conducive to the kind of communication that YouTube supports, so that some of the people that come to my channel expect, I suppose, or would value. So I am thinking a lot about that. You know, I am aware that the sound on some of these videos is really crap, or that the background constantly flickering past me as I wander about is probably really distracting and annoying, and that some of the ideas are completely half-baked and they're full of ums and ers because I haven't prepared what I'm going to say in any sense at all, really. So I am aware of those shortcomings. I mean, my entry point into that thinking, and this is going to sound really abstract, I suspect, never mind. My entry point in it actually is the work of an artist called Vito Acconci, who I'm very fond of. I like his early work. He's still making work, but he made the work that I'm particularly thinking of is work he made in the late 1960s, early 1970s, which was pretty hardcore performance artwork, live artwork. He would do it live, but he would also make short films of these artworks. And quite often they were relatively simple actions, what sometimes referred to as symbolic actions or metaphorical actions. Simple actions, and make films of them, like a piece he did called Pryings, in which there's a person looking straight out into a camera and another person trying to pry that person's eyelids open. And it just goes on and on and on. It's just that action, sustained for a long period of time, which sounds banal, but it's actually very disturbing to watch. Or another piece called Velvet Water, in which he submerges his head in a sink of water repeatedly, gasping for air each time and just going through this endless water torture, almost drowning process. And he did lots of work like that. A lot of them have been very aggressive to his own body and quite difficult to look at. And the reason why I mention that is because when he talked about his work, or when he talked about his work at that point certainly, he talked about it as not about communication, or not at a formal level about communication. He talked about the relationship between the viewers of that work as one of witnessing, rather than coming into any sense of communion. And he used this really nice phrase. He says that when audience comes to his work, they come at it from the side, he says, from the side. which is an odd one, considering a lot of his work, particularly the work for camera, is done straight out to the camera. So you are looking face to face to another human being, having their eyelids forced open. But the take on it is from the side. So you're a kind of accidental witness, you're a bystander, you're standing beside this, and you have no way of intervening or communicating with it. So it's that kind of idea. And it's a circuitous route to what I'm talking about. But I've kind of started thinking about these videos in that way, at least how they're functioning for me. I don't pretend to assume that anybody else would think of those things. That's a bit arcane, I recognise that. But I'm kind of thinking of it in those terms, that these are ramblings, unprepared, pretty low quality ramblings. I mean low quality in terms of the content, absolutely sometimes. In terms of delivery, absolutely, pretty much all the time. And in terms of the technical quality, yes, all the time, I suppose. So these ramblings, but to the extent that they function in the public domain, which they weren't originally intended to do, really. I hadn't even thought about the fact that YouTube is public, which I know sounds stupid. But to the extent that they're intended to function in the public domain, they are, I think, intended to be looked at from the side, in the way that Vittorio Conci talks about his early work, intended to be looked at from the side, which is fine. But again, I have to say I have a problem with that. Vittorio Conci at that time was often accused of arrogance for taking a kind of fine art position which doesn't take account of its audience, doesn't take account of the massive investment of time and attention that people are giving to the work. And I think that's a valid complaint to make about work that takes that attitude. And to the extent that I'm taking that approach, I'm also subject to that criticism, and that would be valid. So, in the sense that I'm not addressing an audience, I'm doing something for myself, which occasionally is being witnessed. It does feel a bit arrogant sometimes, since I've started thinking in those terms. Which isn't to say I'm going to stop doing it, because I do find it incredibly useful doing this. Getting my tangled thoughts into a straight line and putting it out there, it's been very revealing for me personally, and very useful. And some of the comments I've had from viewers, again, has been very useful and interesting and very gratefully received. But what it's leading up to, and this is leading up to something, it's not completely endless ramble. What this is leading up to is that what I thought I would do is to start a second channel. I'm not sure what it's called yet, and I'll put it in the sidebar when I eventually launch this video. A second channel which is perhaps more YouTube conventional, which is to do with one person sitting in front of a camera, ideally preceded with a title, giving a relatively prepared, or at least pre-planned the delivery of some pre-planned ideas, hopefully with a relatively straightforward narrative arc which takes people through them and doesn't do the kind of circuitous circularity that I tend to involve myself in. So that's where I'm going with that. I do want to keep these rambles going because, as I say, I do find them personally helpful. But I will launch a second channel, and if you're looking at this video now, the address for that video will be in the sidebar, wherever the sidebar is, I don't know. And yeah, that's quite a daunting prospect, I have to say, for me. But I'll give it a go. And any thoughts you have on that subject? Who am I talking to? I'm talking to a tree. Any thoughts that some mysterious witnessing listener might have will be gratefully received. This is the tree I'm talking to. It's a very nice tree. It's an oak tree beside the Trent and Mersey Canal.